about her cheekbones.
Like, that could be in The Onion. That literally could be in The Onion.
All right, this is a special episode here. I have to move over here because you can tell the microphone is at a different. Don't cut to it yet, there, Garrett. It's at a different position because we have a live guest in studio, a good friend of mine actually. You know him on YouTube, How the World Works. He wrote the book. Was it Enroll Responsibly?
Please enroll responsibly.
Please enroll responsibly, because he's a polite little Jewish boy, and also U of M legal scholar, Lee Doren. Thank you, sir, for being back in the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you haven't been doing the political thing a lot lately.
I have not. I used to be very involved in doing those critique fact-checking videos and kind of took a little break.
This is true, and and he emailed me out of the blue, just with, I think it might have, 50 Washington Post fact checks from you, and you were like, we might have to whittle this down. But what spawned you just deciding?
I read the Washington Post fact checking on a Donald Trump speech that he gave in Montana. Yeah. And they said 76% of his claims are false. So I'm like, well, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Let me actually look at what they did, and they reviewed 97 of his claims, and they were wrong on a significant number of their fact checking.
Right. Yeah. But see, now I'm not hearing the passion I did in the phone call when you called me. You were pretty pissed.
It was one of the worst fact checking I've ever seen.
All right. There we go. It's one of the worst fact checkings you've ever seen. And this is one thing I think what's really important here. So we're going to go through 12 today. 12 of I guess probably the most egregious examples of the fact checking.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not just so much fact-checking, you'll see, it's just sort of they decide to fact-check frivolities, which really don't matter. And that, again, lends itself to the narrative. And I think what's important is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, along with the Southern Poverty Law Center, they hold these people out as the arbiters of truth. Snopes, PolitiFact, Washington Post, right? PolitiFact has the meter. Washington, who has the Pinocchios?
The Washington Post has the Pinocchios.
The Pinocchios. Okay, that's right. So that's what's important is people rely on them for truth. And like you were saying just before we started recording, it's not so much that they told half-truths or outright lied, it's that they felt so comfortable.
Yeah, and they've essentially anointed themselves, the arbiters of truth. And I think a lot of times, you may differ a little bit on this, but I think a lot of times they're fact-checking things that they don't do all the work on, or they're not completely competent to talk about. And then they just make a declaration that, for Pinocchios or Pants on Fire. And they know that people are not going to actually take the time to read their analysis.
Yeah.
And those type of headlines is what makes the news.
I don't think you're wrong, but it's a 50-50 shot. If you hire someone incompetent, why wouldn't these people be incompetent and give us one every now and then? Why are they incompetent? And it always stacks up against Donald Trump or conservatives.
So that's true. I think Adam Carolla has made this point before that, if you expected someone to deal with change, back and forth, You'd expect to win about 50% of the time if they were always messing up. But it seems to always be in their favor.
Exactly.
And so that does eventually, as you'll go through these fact checks, it's pretty bad, this one.
Okay. All right. So let's go. We'll go through a few of these. We'll just start with one that you sent that I thought was pretty funny. So to make this clear, these were fact checks from Washington Post regarding statements Donald Trump made, and then we are fact checking their fact checks.
Exactly.
It's like the inception of fact checking. Yeah. So first we'll give you the quote that Donald Trump gave, and then the claim. So the quote from Donald Trump on this one was, "Yes, John Tester voted for liberal Obama judges who tried to take away your Second Amendment." Washington Post claimed this, misleading. Right? They said it's not clear which judges Trump was referring to, but Tester has an A- rating from the National Rifle Association. His website states, as a gun owner, John has voted against legislation that would violate Montanans' Second Amendment rights. And here it is. So this is something that they claim that it is misleading, that it's wrong. What's the truth here?
What Trump said is 100% true.
Okay.
John Tester appointed Justice Sotomayor.
Right.
Period. It doesn't matter what his opinion is, what John Tester was voted on by the NRA. The question is his judgment for Justice Sotomayor.
Right.
And Justice Sotomayor basically does not believe that you have an individual right to own a gun, own a handgun. And we know this because in the Chicago versus McDonald case, or McDonald versus Chicago case, where Chicago banned a man from buying a handgun. It was illegal. And she said that the states have a right to basically ban a person from owning a handgun. Now, the Washington Post, what they actually go into this, they say, well, she was also in the dissent in a later case in 2016 known as Voisin. Voisin did not go into the constitutional issues of the Second Amendment.
No.
And they said she was on the dissent with Justice Thomas. I actually read the case. She said specifically she did not agree with Justice Thomas on his Second Amendment.
Well, I hate to interrupt you, but this
discussion.
is something we've covered a lot too. Obviously, Heller versus D.C.
Yeah.
We're talking about the dissenting opinions. We said, listen, legally the dissenting opinion here is there is no private right to firearm ownership at all. It's not, okay, maybe not assault weapons. It's not a ban on magazines. If you look at Heller versus D.C., you look at the dissent, it really draws a clear line. legally, that's what the dissenting judges were saying there. And it's similar, obviously a different case, but it's the same opinion. So they're fact-checking him for basically not liking someone or using words they don't like. But like you said, the NRA rating could not be less relevant if you don't believe in the private right to firearm ownership.
And they tried to obscure the facts here because in 2008 is when the Heller decision was. In 2009 is when Sotomayor was brought in the courts to say, oh, we don't know what she thinks on this.
Right.
Well, the Chicago decision came out the year afterwards, and she literally, Justice Breyer gave the dissent, and he referred back to the Heller case. He said it was wrong.
Yeah.
You don't have an individual right to own a handgun, and she sided with him on that case.
Yeah.
So unless the Washington Post wants to argue with a straight face that banning someone from owning a handgun is not taking away your Second Amendment rights, I don't know what the heck they're talking about.
I don't know either. It sounds like wordplay to me. All right, we'll go on to number 2. This is from the Donald Trump quote. We've set this up as, and even though we got a little surprise vote that evening, you all remember that evening somebody came in with a thumbs down after campaigning for years that he was going to repeal and replace. And he was talking, of course, about John McCain. And Washington Post, their claim was that this statement is mostly false. What they wrote is Trump is referring to Senator John McCain. McCain complained about the bill, had not gone through. Well, give us the truth on this. He's talking about John McCain, and they say he's wrong in his exact quote about John McCain.
John McCain ran against Ann Kirkpatrick, okay?
Right.
He has, if you go to his YouTube channel, you can see tons of his attack videos against Obamacare, about his need to repeal Obamacare, against Ann Kirkpatrick, that she's going to support Obamacare. He ran on repealing Obamacare. Then at the 11th hour, he comes in and goes, I have some procedural problems on repealing Obamacare. And at the last minute, when everyone assumed he was going to, support repealing it, comes in, does the thumb down, everyone goes, oh, we're shocked.
Yeah.
And Washington Post says Trump is wrong here. I don't know where they're getting this from.
Well, you know what's funny is that if John McCain had ever won the election, they'd be doing the exact same thing with McCain. It doesn't matter how moderate you are. Now they act like, well, McCain, why couldn't we have a McCain in the Republican Party? Now it's become crazy. They did the same thing with John McCain.
Yeah.
He was a war hawk. He was out of his mind. He was crazy. He was losing his mind. The actuary tables was something that Matt Damon brought up. He was likely to die. Then all of a sudden they're supporting Bernie Sanders. So it is important to note, I think, to the historical context where now they come to the aid of John McCain to try and attack Donald Trump. They were doing the exact same thing back then.
Well, if you remember prior when he ran against Bush, and he was always the favorite of the media until he was a threat to actually taking away their power from the Democrats. And now all of a sudden he's this evil person who's going to do all these bad things and a war hawk and so on. But when he's in the opposition to his own party, then we need to say how wonderful it is.
Here's something, let me ask you this. As someone who's a lawyer, he's a lawyer. When they say that this is false, President Donald Trump speaks out of turn. We both know that. Sometimes he says things that, it obfuscates the truth, or he just makes stuff up. Okay? If we can give you that, fine. But in this case, it is accurate to the letter as to what John McCain did. Why do you think they say it's misleading? Is that incompetence?
I think in part it's incompetence. You're right about the issue of, it does seem a little suspect if they're always wrong in one direction. But
this is so specific, and he's right.
I almost there's almost no response to it. In all seriousness, in this particular case, we see video of John McCain putting out attack ads and saying why he's going to run on doing this. Trump says he ran on this and gave us a late surprise vote. And it seems like they're only focused on that 11th hour discussion of McCain being like, I got some procedural problems with how this is going about.
Who cares? He gave it a thumbs down.
Yeah, exactly. And so the fact that he gave a late justification.
All right, we don't need to spend any more time on this, Lee. See, this thing, he's a lawyer. He'll talk about this till the cows come home. Lie. That one's we can chalk up to the lie category.
It is a lie.
Come on, you're trying to be so nice. Like, it's incompetent. He said he ran on this campaign on this, then a last minute thumbs down. And I don't know how they say some of these we can go, well, why are you fact checking this? It's so absurd. And we'll get to a few of those.
Yeah.
But there are a few clear cut examples where he is so in the right, and that's where it forces people like me who are not President Donald Trump fans, and I don't think you were necessarily in the primary, to come to his defense because of the constant attacks when they're so unwarranted.
Well, what drives me crazy is he does kind of extend what the truth is all the time. And I think it's partly because he's kind of a binary person. It's either good or bad. And so rather than getting a specific number right, if it's going up, he'll say it's the greatest thing ever. If it's going down, it's the worst thing ever.
Right.
And so when he's off by quite a bit because he doesn't really care about the individual numbers, they'll fact check everything he says.
Well, he's in the same with John McCain. Like, John McCain's great. And they're like, John McCain sucks. He just goes right back and forth. By the way, do you appreciate that I aimed the Walther away from you?
Yeah, thank you.
It's not loaded for people who know.
Thank you.
Fantastic sponsor. We appreciate you, Walter. Okay. Since the election, we've created in wealth $7 trillion. And Washington Post claimed this is misleading. This appears to be based on the performance of the Russell 3000 index since Trump's inauguration. This index includes nearly 98% of U.S. stocks, but the market capitalization of the top U.S. companies is not a good indicator of wealth gains for the general public. That's you hear Hopper. He's mad that you're not petting him right now. Just in case you were wondering, this is an on-air, unedited, just two guys in a studio. So what's the truth about Donald Trump's statement there about wealth creation?
If you listen to their analysis, they basically admit what he said is true.
Yeah,
We created that.
Like.
We created that amount of wealth, and you might say, I mean, even when Trump ran, I think against Hillary, he said that the stock market was a bubble or whatever he said. Doesn't matter. If you're saying the wealth is created, which it was, he might be off by 0.1, I think. If they want to get him on the 0.1, they can get him on the 0.1. But it was created, and period. The statement from the start of that sentence to the end of the sentence is accurate.
Right. Well, what's funny is they try to argue that it's nuanced, or even when you came to me and you said, okay, I want to provide context to these answers, I was going, hold on a second. Before we get into context, let's just go, boom, the truth. Because people need to hear if it's true or not. And then you provide the context. And I think that's a big difference between the left and the right. The left always wants to deal in context and then not really provide a definitive statement. Whereas you do provide a definitive statement. Sometimes as a lawyer, you provide the context first. I believe in providing a definitive statement first and then the context. Good example here might be, okay, let's say I give you $10. And I say, I gave him $10. And you say, well, yeah, but I was taxed and I only had $6 left. WaPo can come out and say, well, he didn't get $10. That's what they're doing here. I gave you $10, but you didn't get $10 at the end of the day. And so they claim that he's a liar.
Yeah, well, then they're claiming that the stock market isn't a good indicator of the country's wealth, but he's pointing out that we created X amount of wealth, which we did.
Right.
Since he's been in office. Now, you can argue whether it result of him or not. And this is the thing that bothers me the most. They have ways that they could actually provide analysis back and forth about a legitimate debate on policy, and they don't do that. They come out and say, pants on fire, and then they give garbage analysis.
Well, they used those indicators under Obama, too, as well.
Yeah.
If that happened under Obama, that's why they didn't include the job participation rate. So they use different indicators when it's convenient. The truth is the number that what we're not trying to get into is not make an argument that all of his policies are right, not make an argument that even the way he's framed these things are necessarily correct, but that his statement in and of itself, which is what they're analyzing, was truthful.
Yes.
Okay. Here's another one that they thought was really necessary to pay. So he said, and I didn't pay $1.8 billion, by the way, in cash. We paid nothing. Washington Post claimed that this was misleading. This was Trump comparing his dealings with North Korea to Obama's dealings with Iran. This is from Washington Post. The money in question, which is actually $1.7 billion, was Iran's all along and was sent by the Obama administration to settle decades-old claim. Anyway, they go on. They provide a little bit more context, but as to the claim itself, where he said, I didn't pay $1.8 billion, by the way, in cash, we paid nothing.
That's true. I mean, that's what drives me crazy. From start to finish, the claim is true. He did not pay money for the hostages. Now, the context behind that, and this is what drives me nuts. There's some truth to the way Washington Post could have responded to this, but it shouldn't be part of this fact check, because from start to finish, it's true. We basically had Iran's money frozen from a arms dealing we had before they took our hostages in the 70s.
Right.
And we kept that money, didn't give them the arms. They said, you took our hostages, we're keeping the money. And it's been going through litigation for decades.
Right.
And now Obama administration says, okay, we're going to settle this because we might lose in this international tribunal. And so now we're going to give you the money.
You make Iran sound like it's Mattress Girl, but yes, it pretty much is.
And they said, okay, we're going to give you this money on a settlement. And then they dropped $400 billion and $1 million in cash.
Yeah.
Airdropped
that's
into Iran.
Important, too, because for the left, they deal so much in nuance, right? They don't explain any of the nuance. They just say it was Iran's all along to begin with. It's like, well, hold on a second. Why was that in dispute? Could it be hostages? Could there be a long-standing crisis and negotiate? They just say it was Iran's all along, and then go on to talk about how the nuance of President Donald Trump's statement is wrong. This statement itself doesn't. You could fact-check their fact-checking of the fact-checking and get into the nuance and talk about why they're wrong and why it wasn't Iran's all along.
They could actually do a good service and actually provide some context and analysis of that where that $1.8 billion comes from.
Yeah. It's hard. B's get confused with T's.
Yeah, exactly. But they don't. And what was crazy is, and what Trump was referring to is, we airdropped 400 million of that literally into Iran the same day the hostages came out, and they go, it's a coincidence. It has nothing to do with the fact of the deal. In fact, we agreed to give him the 1.8 a while back, and so.
Yeah, I know. This is just okay. All right. I don't want people to start watching paint dry in lieu of this, but that is an important claim. Okay, here's another one where he says, referring to, of course, Hillary Clinton. We need to provide the context here. And by the way, this is part of the big umbrella. Was it 76%? We just had the number up.
Yeah.
Of Donald Trump's statements are untrue. So let us know what you think. What percentage of statements from Donald Trump are true or untrue? And what percentage of those would you file under pivotal issues? Would you file under non-negotiables, close-handed issues, versus, I don't know, he gets pissed off because the Cowboys lost the Super Bowl or something? Okay. Comment below. So this claim, talking about Hillary Clinton, she gets special treatment under the Justice Department. And by the way, I also want to include same claim because otherwise we'll be here all day. He also said, how about that FBI agent? How about that guy? You think there was just a little bias there, a little bias? Oh, do we catch them in the act? It's rigged. It's a rigged deal, folks. So he's talking about obviously there. So let's start with Hillary Clinton. These are both kind of the same claim where he's talking about special treatment. Washington Post claimed that both of them, not misleading, false. Let's start with Hillary Clinton, the statement.
She was given special treatment. And there's proof to this. And what bothers me is when people lie to themselves. I dare anybody to do exactly what Hillary Clinton did and try to stay out of jail. Literally take a server, put it in your bathroom, put classified information on there, send it all around, and expect that you're not going to go to jail for exactly what she did. And then when they ask to subpoena stuff, tear it all up and bleach bit it and get rid of all that. Of course she got special treatment.
Yeah.
Now what's ironic about this, the special treatment that they got, is if you remember, they found Anthony Weiner when they were doing an investigation on him. They found some of Hillary's emails from his wife. Well, they found out that based on the bias that they had against Trump, they sat on Anthony Weiner's material and didn't investigate it.
Yeah.
And then at the last minute, it became an October surprise because the New York FBI said, hey, guys, are you going to go check on this stuff?
Yeah.
And Comey comes in at the last minute in October, goes, oh, there's some stuff we got to check out. And ironically, the bias worked against them.
I want to go back to that point really quickly about Weiner, because also in that same thing was they were talking about Peter Strzok.
Yeah.
How it's spelled, S-T-R-Z-O-K, for people who don't know. I just never want to pronounce it incorrectly, so I deliberately pronounce it incorrectly. Did he get special treatment as well?
Did he get special treatment?
Yeah.
Certainly seems like it. I mean, I don't know how you can be on the case and basically saying we're going to stop Donald Trump, which he said, and he texted to his girlfriend that we'll stop him, and you get to stay on the case. And
well, this is a good example too, and these media outlets give special treatment. So you mentioned Anthony Weiner, and you and I both knew Andrew Breitbart while he was alive.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit closer with him. I worked with him more at Breitbart, but I remember he really enjoyed your videos, and we all sat down a couple of times. And the Anthony Weiner scandal, a lot of people don't remember this. Before Andrew Breitbart took over Anthony Weiner's press conference, remember they said that Andrew Breitbart was lying.
Yes.
They said Andrew Breitbart came out and said there are pictures from Anthony Weiner that he's been exchanging with young women on Twitter, and out of respect for his family, I don't want to release these pictures, but this is obviously very incriminating, and obviously his concern was the leverage against a sitting senator.
Yeah.
And they said this is a lie, Breitbart lies. And they didn't cover it. And as a matter of fact, Anthony Weiner was going to deliver that press conference to completely deny the allegations until Andrew Breitbart took that stage. And I remember clear as day, you heard screaming through the building, Andrew Breitbart's in the building. He went up, took over the press conference, and Anthony Weiner had to abandon his talking points. So the media was doing Anthony Weiner's bidding back then. Only when it became so overwhelming, meaning the actual Space Odyssey upward angle picture of his penis, did they finally admit it.
Well, Andrew basically shamed them into actually covering it is what he did.
Right.
I mean, at some point, the evidence was so overwhelming that it wasn't some hacking or anything like that. It was what Anthony Weiner did, and they didn't want to believe it, and they wanted to do everything they could to cover for him.
They called him a liar.
Yes.
And they didn't do any due diligence. They
Right.
didn't even try to look into it, because we've had this happen too with when we've dealt with like the Austin Chronicle, or we've had to deal with a lot of papers, or when we dealt with Utah Antifa. These local papers, we go, here's someone handing Jared a shiv. Here's them talking about luring Trump supporters, Ben Shapiro, attendees to their cars with sawed-off shotguns. Here they are doing it on camera, and every single person in local media turned away. The only people who didn't were the police, who took us into the cop car to get the footage, and then the FBI, who made the calls afterward. So there really is, I think the real overarching truth here that people need to understand is you can't just appeal to authority. And whether it's the scientific community, whether it's journalistic integrity, whether it's identity politics, it doesn't mean that anyone's opinion is invalid. I'm not saying don't trust them. What I'm saying is you can't simply throw your hands up and say, well, I trust Washington Post, or I trust Snopes, or I trust the person who wrote this one scientific study. You do have to aggregate it and make your own inferences.
Exactly. And it goes back to the point that we were talking about, is that, the people are not, they assume that the people are not actually, they're not going to go check the facts on their own. They're not going to go look up the PDFs of the Paris Climate Accords and go read it and go, that's written right there.
That's what's so disturbing to me. That's what's so disturbing to me is the complete total lack of accountability. It's not that, put it this way, a bully in school has to punch you in the bathroom, right? He has to try and look, he has to look around a little bit, make sure. But if it would be way more disturbing if bullies in school were just kicking the crap and curb stomping kids right there in front of the dean and going, okay, all right, good, have a good day. That's what's so disturbing. These people are doing it in plain sight because they don't believe that anyone has any intention of fact checking them, and certainly not anyone else in the media.
Or the teachers, tripping the kids down the hallway.
Yes, that could happen too. That happened to me actually several times, and the principal looked away. Yeah, when I saw the principal look away, I said, well, okay, maybe I deserve that one. All right, speaking of low IQ individuals, Mrs. We'll hit the censor button because that's her actual name. He said this of Maxine Waters. She is a low IQ individual, okay? Maxine Waters. She's somewhere in the mid-60s. I believe that. Washington Post claimed, and of course tosses under the 76% umbrella, that this is false. What's the truth?
I don't even know why they're fact-checking this. I mean, does the average citizen, when they're sitting at home and they're thinking Washington Post comes out with a fact check, comes out with a headline, do they think they're really going to fact check an insult?
Yeah. Was it an insult though, or do you think that he doesn't understand that 60s is actually functionally retarded?
I think Trump is very aware of what he does.
You think he knows that 60s is like functionally retarded?
Yes, I think he's very well aware.
Get
and so what bothers me is he's throwing an insult, which
I don't know that I agree then. You think he knows that like 60s IQ is waterburn baby freak out?
I think so. I think so. And here it's frustrating to see this type of thing thrown into that. Again, it literally is in the mix with trade policy, with NATO, with Supreme Court decisions, with the Second Amendment, and Roger Goodell gets paid this amount, and Maxine Waters has a low IQ. It's like, how is it?
I know. Well, listen, this is, of course, and Russian prostitutes peeing on furniture with the vinyl still on it. Elizabeth Warren proclaims that she's of Indian heritage because her mother says she has high cheekbones. The fact that I'm reading this quote and I know that there's a fact check coming from the Washington Post is what's so hard to deal with. Like, it's like when I do boxing and you're hitting the mitts in boxing and the guy says to throw a two, but he already knows it and he swings at you before because he knows what you're going to throw. It's like I'm reading this and I know what they're going to do. I know what he says and I know they're going to fact check it anyway. I don't know if I can. Okay. Because her mother says she has high cheekbones. That's her only evidence, that her mother said she has high cheekbones. Washington Post claims this is false. And they actually write this. Although there's no hard evidence to support Warren's claim of Native American ancestry, she has cited family lore and not just a stray remark from her mother about her cheekbones.
Like, that could be in The Onion. That literally could be in The Onion. I mean, the fact that the angle,
family lore?
The angle that they chose for it was not whether or not she was being untruthful about her heritage. It was she also cited not just her cheekbones, but family lore too.
Yeah.
And so he should have also said family lore, and then would the claim be true? I don't know, but.
Well, if they cared about truth, wouldn't they just do the 23andMe? What's the genetic heritage testing?
I don't understand.
It'd be really easy to do. I've done it. I hate that I did it because I'm mostly French.
The thing is, there's no evidence that she was a minority. And back when they didn't have the internet, what they had was the equivalent of LinkedIn and these directories.
Yeah.
And what she did was she listed herself as a minority in the directory. And it was the type of thing that she clearly knew. I mean, you can't prove she knew, but she knew that if you were listed as a minority, you would get some preferential treatment for hiring. And she was listed as in the directory as a minority. And
Uncle Sam's none the wiser. Hey there, YouTube viewer. If you like this video, you first off should probably seek counseling, but you should subscribe or hit the notification bell or watch one of these videos that's playing. The truth is, I don't know what any of that means anymore. If you try and subscribe or hit the notification bell, you won't be notified. And if you try and click one of these videos, it's just going to take you to BuzzFeed Boldly Fat Broads as they get carried out of their houses where they had to break down the north wall and they get carried out in a land whale tarp. I don't know what's happening on YouTube. I know what's happening with Mug Club, louderwithcreditor.com/Mug Club. You get to watch The Daily Show 1 hour every single day, not just clips, along with like 15 other shows for $69 annually if you're a student or veteran or military.